Hi guys and welcome back. This is part 2 of area and perimeter and my name is Aberad Ziba. Now, what we looked at in our previous video is understanding the definition of length being the distance between 2 points, and then also looking at the definition of perimeter, which is the total distance around the edge of a two-dimensional shape. What I hope to look at specifically in this video is how to calculate the area of two-dimensional shapes, whether they are simple shapes, complex shapes, or in particular, circles. So, in understanding length, we looked at in our previous video the different units that we can use to categorize length, whether they're imperial units or metric units like these. Based on that, let's now look a little bit further at the definition of area. Area is simply the space inside all of the edges of a two-dimensional shape. So take, for instance, a football pitch. Where the spectators sit is what we would call the perimeter, and where the players play on the pitch is the area. So how do we calculate area, you ask? Well, it's quite simple. We multiply the dimensions of each of the shapes that we are taking into consideration. For instance, here is another rectangle. I've got dimensions of 5 and 3 centimeters. To work out the area, I would multiply 5 centimeters by 3 centimeters, and that gives me 15. But the units for area are different to the units for perimeter or for length itself. Notice that I said that we have to multiply the dimensions. Now, if I've got 5 centimeters times by 3 centimeters, the 5 is multiplied by the 3. But we've also got centimeters multiplied by centimeters. So guess what? The area is centimeters squared as a unit. What did we do there? We multiplied centimeters by centimeters, which is centimeters squared. So the units for area are always the length squared, whether it's kilometers squared, whether it's meters squared, even yards squared, it doesn't matter. Every area has got the units squared. So pause the video now and see if you can calculate the area of these rectangles and squares. Great, now check your answers. Okay, so when we're calculating the area of a square or a rectangle, multiplying the two sides together to work out the area is pretty simple. But what about some of the more difficult shapes? We need certain formulas to be able to help us calculate this. Let's take, for instance, a triangle. Now, you might remember from our previous video on shapes, two-dimensional and three-dimensional, we looked at the different types of triangle. Now, it doesn't matter the type of triangle that we're talking about. The area of the triangle is always calculated in the same way. And here is the formula. Now, you will notice in this formula that we have got dimensions and we are halving the dimensions. Be careful to make sure you do not measure the actual diagonal side of a triangle when calculating what we call the height of the triangle. The height of the triangle has to be perpendicular. What do I mean by perpendicular? That means it is at right angles. So the perpendicular height of every single triangle is what we use to calculate its area, and we use the formula half times by the base times by the height. Always remember that the units would still be squared. Have a go at calculating the area of these 3 triangles. Now check your answers. If you've made any mistakes, go back and double check. Sometimes it might be easier just to multiply the base times by the height and then divide it by 2. that is exactly the same as multiplying by a half. Okay, so now let's look at calculating the area of complex shapes. Now, complex shapes are different. The reason being is that they are multiple shapes put together. So here I have a rectangle and a triangle. I need to break it down, calculate the area of the triangle and add it to the area of the rectangle. And simply that helps me calculate the total area of the complex shape. Calculating the area of a complex shape is useful in the world today in things to do with building, painting, construction, for instance. You might need to lay carpet in a room that is not of a standard shape. And in that respect, you would need to be able to break it up into particular shapes to be able to calculate the area of carpet that you need. So that's the application of it. Now let's have a go at calculating some. So calculating the area of this shape here requires us to split it into two shapes, a triangle and a rectangle. We know the area of the rectangle is the length times by the height, and we know the area of the triangle is the height times by the base divided by 2, or half times base times height. Based on this, the area of the rectangle is, and the area of the triangle is, so we add them together and this gives us the total area of the shape of. Now let's look at how to calculate the area of a circle. Now, in a circle, we have already established in the previous video of part 1 that the circle requires the use of this interesting number called pi. Now, the formula for the area of the circle is different to the formula for the circumference of the circle, even though they both use pi. To work out the area of a circle, our formula is pi r squared. What does r stand for? Well, r stands for the radius. So remember, the radius is half of the diameter, or the distance from the center of the circle to the edge of the circle. And if we multiply r squared by pi, we get the area of the circle. Remember once again to always use the units as the length squared. Now try these examples. Okay, now check your answers. Once again, make sure your answers are correct. And if you don't understand, go back, check my answers with your own to try and see where you might have gone wrong. Remember that the diameter is double the length of the radius. So when you've got the diameter, you need to divide it by 2 to work out the length of the radius before you can square it. Now, an extension task for those of you tackling higher tier GCSE or aiming for a 4 or a 5 on the foundation. What to do when you have a semicircle. Now, a semicircle is obviously half a circle. Semi means half. But to calculate the area of the circle, you would simply calculate the full area of the circle and divide it by 2. Now, this concept can also be added if you're given another portion of a circle that is not even a half. For instance, if they gave you a third of a circle, a quarter of a circle, the area will be calculated in the exact same way. Have a go at some of these examples. Right, now check your answers. Right, recap time. So we have looked at how to calculate the area of simple shapes, how to calculate the area of complex shapes, and even looking at how to calculate segments of circles. Remember to use the correct unit every single time. Diagrams are not always drawn to scale in the exam, so be aware of that. And also, practice, practice, practice. Try setting up some questions for yourself in order to be able to see if you can answer your own problems. If you can do that, then share it with a friend, share it with your parents, share it with other people so that you can test your own knowledge and build up your skills. Until next time, take care and I'll see you soon.